Compliance Conversations is a free series from wateroperator.org with expert insights on operating and managing a small public water system. This is episode number 3. In this episode, our host Steve Wilson continues his discussion with Jeff Oxenford about the most common compliance issues, focusing on being prepared for unexpected water quality and infrastructure issues.
The third category I see for compliance is really this acute challenge. Now, typically we think of the total coliform positive or E. coli positive and that causing an acute event. But we've seen events that contaminants that are not necessarily regulated. Salmonella outbreak in, I think it was 2008, I believe, in Colorado. That was salmonella was not regulated per se, but we had to deal with this. The algal toxins issue in Toledo brought this issue forward. Even Flint, Michigan, the lead and copper, they didn't exceed the maximum contaminant level. But again, when we started doing, people started looking at the data more, they found this is an issue we got to deal with immediately. So how we deal with that in the future is going to be a real challenge for not only small communities, for large communities, but for small communities and the whole water industry.
In respect to being prepared for when those things happen. Larger facilities have more wherewithal. They have staff that can go to some of these events, like the emergency planning events and some of those things. It seems like it's a much harder issue. What can a small system do to figure out, what risks that they should be concerned about? I know, you mentioned salmonella earlier, and there's a wide range, really, of what could be a problem if you're not prepared, and how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. First off, the operator just needs to be aware of what's going on in the industry. Your newsletter, Steve, is really great for a place for finding where information is coming out. I think you typically are aware when a major event happens in the country and people get aware. So I think getting that source, AWWA has some great sources. RCAP, we also have quite a different reference materials. So keeping aware is one thing. The other is that a lot of these events have happened when the healthcare providers in their communities have actually identified issues. Alamosa, the salmonella outbreak, actually started by a bunch of doctors noticing that folks are getting cases of diarrhea and so forth, and they were trying to track that down, and were able to get back with the utility. So having the communication with your health professionals in a small community, it's typically a few people, you could let them know that if you're seeing something like this, let us know. The idea of emergency response planning and being ready for an event is always something that any community should be aware of what happens if. I think part of our job is to be not only doing what we need to do today, but also be prepared for what if. The big challenge for small communities is resources. And the operators typically for a small community aren't specialists, they are generalists. They need to know everything within the community. So when a problem does arise, I think probably the most important thing for small communities is to be able to take advantage of technical assistance providers like RCAP has, or your state primacy agency. A lot of times you'll have engineers you can work with. But I think the big challenge for small communities is not to have that specialized expertise. And so I think that is a very important thing to be thinking about for if you do have an issue, where do you go to get help? And to me, one place I always point small communities towards is RCAP. I think their technical providers there are excellent to be able to help you come up with a solution to one of these challenges.
No one can really go it alone all the time, and most of the TA providers, RCAP folks, they're licensed operators or they're state primacy people who've been around the block, and so they've seen it already, they've done it already, and have looked at other ways to solve problems. So.
Thanks for watching Compliance Conversations. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be the first to hear about new videos. And remember, regulations don't have to stress you out. Wateroperator.org is a collaboration between the Rural Community Assistance Partnership and the University of Illinois through the Illinois State Water Survey, with funding from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. The views expressed here are solely from the presenters and are not endorsed or reviewed by the US EPA.